Panelists today, we are going to discuss how organizations can prioritize employee mental health and digitize care. So let me start with you, Richa, and if you could share about your journey, because we know that you started the company Your Dose in 2014. What kind of difference you have been able to make in the market in the last 6 years?
Um, so thank you, first of all, Punita. Thank you for having us here. Um, it's been an exciting journey for the last 6 years. In fact, to be honest, I'm not someone who comes from this field of psychology. I've been the person on the other side, somebody who's experienced it herself, with faced difficulties, faced challenges herself, and coming from an engineering background, the question to me, to myself, was what is that I could have done differently to maybe help a lot of people to save them, right? And I think with that, and having that personal, I lost a friend of mine to suicide because somewhere she anticipated at that time that she might not get a good placement. I'm talking about 12, 13 years back, much
Mhm.
before any company, anything has come to campus, right? And we did have some support system in the form of counselors, psychologists, even psychiatrists, but not many people would go to them. I think personally, that was a recession time. I personally felt a lot of stress, but I think the fact what will people think of me, people might make fun of me, etc., was never able to go out and seek support. And when this happened, I mean, that question of what is that I could have done differently, what is that I could do to maybe help many more people like her, like ourselves, right? Our journey started. And in the last 6 years, I think we've been able to work with almost 2 lakh, or rather 20 lakh people. Um, we have a team of 1,000 plus experts as a part of our team. We have an emotional wellness platform where people could be completely anonymous. So they could call themselves Superman, Batman, whatever they like, and they can seek support and guidance from professionals. These are all trained professionals who are psychologists, counselors, career coaches, life coaches, and people can have one on one session with them. Video, telephonic, chat, in fact, face to face at a lot of places as well. I think what started as a team of 2, 3 people now is like 100 plus, 1,000 plus experts as part of team. 20 lakh plus people have been impacted. From a lot of students to a lot of working professionals, a lot of migrant workers, um, children, elderlies. I think we've been able to cater and support to quite a few people across the country. Primarily India being the focus.
Okay, interesting. Sure. Coming to you, Jyotsna, I mean, you have been in business since 2015. Our attendees would definitely want to know what attracted you towards mental health concerns, how Visa is addressing them, and there is an interesting AI chatbot which you use. Tell us about that.
Yes. So Wiser is named after Eliza, who was the first chatbot ever done.
Okay.
Was supposed to be a Rogerian therapist. So the movie Her, if anybody's seen it, is based on this chatbot called Eliza. And when I was going through depression, and I tried a lot of different resources in early 2016. So I went through founder depression. My first Tashkin, when it started, the parent company wasn't a mental health company. And as I was going through founder depression, I looked at different resources. And when I was creating Wiser, I thought I need something like Eliza, only wiser. And so that's where Wiser was born. But in fact, as a part of that journey, one thing I realized, we talk about stigma, right? And stigma is only one part of it. So I faced no stigma. I didn't have a mental issue around, the fact that I shouldn't see a therapist. But when you're in depression, it's hard enough to have a bath, let alone find a therapist and go. So you go to Google and you go online and you look for stuff. So I found some e-learning online around this. I found some assessments. I figured out how to, that I was depressed by taking one assessment. But the whole thing was super difficult. I even went to Richa's site. So your host was there at that time. Richa, you don't know this. So I talked to one of your, at that time, you used to give free minute sessions still anonymous. So that was really helpful. And I talked to one of your folks, and I realized that what I was saying to her was super useful. And this is not because the therapist wasn't good. This is just how therapy works. And when you're on the other side, you realize that it's what you say, the fact that you're typing it out, that's really useful. What the other person is doing is just asking very standard questions like, why are you feeling this way? What happened? They're helping you explore, right? And my startup, I had been working on AI. So a part of me, I'm a ed tech product person. So I've been like before that 20 years, won a lot of awards doing products for skilling people. And I was like, this is a skilling issue. I got out of depression with the idea of Vyza, saying that I'm going to solve mental health and I'm going to create something with AI that actually makes it so safe because you're not actually exposing your weakness to any human being. And it guides you through all of these techniques that I need to learn in order to get myself out of depression. So whether it's restructuring a negative thought or practicing mindfulness, as I think Sneh will talk about, but all of those things, I can talk through it myself. So what a therapist does is provide this next layer of support. But initially, can I do self-care? So that's where Vyza was born. And it was a side project. I was already in depression over the fact that I hadn't been able to crack Facebook marketing, etc. I'd raised a bit of money. I hated the fact that I couldn't generate revenue out of the money that I had raised. So we didn't spend any money on marketing. Okay. And till date, with 2.4 million users, with zero marketing. So it's an organic growth of Vyza. It just took off. So by now, we decide that Vyza hires our team because people use Vyza and then come and apply to us. Vyza finds our investors for us. Vyza, like the impact of what it does just brings everybody to us. And, even our B2B sales right now, it's just me and my co-founder. We don't have a sales team. We've added 8 healthcare clients in the last 7 months internationally in the US and Singapore and UK. But it's one of those things where the power of somebody being able to see impact on their own directly just brings them to you. So it's been a fascinating journey.
Interesting, Jyotsna, and you have been pretty open talking about your personal journey and how it got you. I mean, that's the real idea of entrepreneurship. You feel the pain, find the gap in the market, and then you work towards with the right solution. Interesting. So we'll come back to you again for more questions. So before that, I would like to ask Sneh about her journey of being the founder of Zero Mind Lab.
So basically, I'm a techie person and served in industry for almost 15 years in the technology. But with the technology, I'm pretty interested for emotional well-being because when I was working from fresher to the deputy manager in one of the organization, so that journey was not easy. Bridging that level within 8 years of time was quite stressful too. So when you are having a knowledge, you need to be emotionally stable also. And as you go on, climbing up on the ladder, you need to be mentally strong to take a decision because these decisions not only impact your personal life, it also impacts on your professional life. So this brings me into thinking I need to do something where I will be working on the mental health, on the emotional well-being, where I can be able to work on the intersection of personal and professional life because the person is the same having different role. A woman as a mom, as a spouse, or as a daughter-in-law, having a different roles, but she is the one who is working different role as a boss, as a team leader, as a project manager, as a founder, or as a director in her organization. So both roles she is playing, but that person is the same. So this is somewhere I thought of I need to start working on it, and that's why I came up with this idea called Zero Mind Lab. And this is like, if you are having some of the issues in your professional career or the personal life, take this point as your 0 point and start from here. So this segment comes on, and this is especially for the people who are into corporate segment. And I'm mainly working with the employers, employee, consultant, and aspiring startups and all, because everyone wants to, get a success in their professional life. Everyone want to be a businesswoman or a businessman, but yes, mentally they need to be stable to take, these all these decisions ahead, because this is going to have an impact not only on them but the people around them. Yeah.
So today, this being an all-women panel, I really want to ask, do you think women are much more sensitized to the cause of mental and emotional well-being?
Um, so there's definitely data which says that, women go out and seek support more. However, at your dose, we see the other trend otherwise.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
yeah, because it's anonymous, it's available
Yeah.
24/7. I think it's more men who actually come out and seek support. Especially
Hmm.
India being a target where, it's all about men has to be this way, men can't cry, I think that's a global thing as well, right? But definitely we see more men coming out and seeking support. But the data actually says more women go out and seek support. Maybe in the traditional spaces, that is the case.
I
So
think
according to you, it's
internationally,
men more who are asking more queries and coming up with more questions. Okay.
I think also, it depends how you're getting to them. So, as an example, if you're a tech platform, then you're getting to people who are on a computer, who are on the phone, who are seeking support there. And also, men have as many issues. And in fact, more men are likely to, young men are high risk of suicide. So, much more, in fact, that's the highest risk group, sort of the age group that I think, Richa, your friend was, and my friend's son was when we lost them. And that is the highest risk age group for young men for suicide. So definitely we have to reach the men. And the best way to reach them is on a tech platform with an anonymous setting, because it's less acceptable socially for men to appear weak. And women still can say, please help me. For a man, that becomes the last straw that they're clutching, that they can keep the pretense that they're okay, very often. Then that societal construct, I don't think it's a gender bias. It's just how society views the gender.
Societal
Yeah.
constructors, yeah.
So, Sneha, would you like to share any numbers or any data percentage?
No, of course, I'm also agreeing on this point. I mean, yes, of course, even data is proving the same that women are started moving out, and I don't think so nowadays. It's gender bias, and I guess instead of talking or about gender bias, I will rather say we should accept the way nature have created us. We have our uniqueness, and we should give more importance to it.
And
So,
I think also for India, I'd just like to add that there is just so few people accessing mental health that saying whether it's men or women is, I mean, India has, if I give you numbers, India has what, 5,000 therapists, psychiatrists, mental health professionals. And I mean, Richa, you probably added another 1,000 to that. So you probably significantly increased that number. And uh, out of that, we have underbooked. People are underbooked in India. In the UK, there are 50,000. They're 10 times as much for a tiny country. And they have waiting lists that last a year. So you have to understand the difference in terms of underutilization of mental health in India across both genders.
so interesting point. So, in the current times of COVID, which has changed our current lifestyle, and I mean, we are all adapting to the new normal, how do you see people coming out more and talking about mental health? How has it impacted your cause?
Right. Um, so definitely there's a lot of ambiguity, there is uncertainty, there is, we don't know what to expect. So there is definitely we are seeing at least almost 100% increase in the number of people coming out and seeking support. Um, and given that, like I mentioned, at Kyotos, we work with from young employees to students to children to housewives to geriatrics, and we have seen to migrant workers as well. But we have seen a rise everywhere. If
Mhm.
I were to put those into the kind of issues that we are seeing, I think if I were to divide into two broader categories, one would be personal, another would be professional. So in personal, if I were to say, I think a lot of us are not even used to staying with our own families for so long time. I think so a lot of dynamics at home, finding it difficult to get along with spouse, with children, with their parents, and all sorts of things, right? A lot of parents are reaching out about parenting, saying, hey, I was used to living in a certain way, and now 24 hours with my child, it just can get overwhelming, right? I think there are on the professional side. Also, I think, yeah, more on the professional side. If you look, I think that blurring of the boundary of saying my work is over. When we used to come to office, we would know that the work is over. To that not knowing when that is happening, when it is getting over, I think a lot of people are reaching out about productivity, burnout,
Mhm.
um, finding it difficult to work from home. Also, some people, like majority, in fact, majority of the population in India do not have luxury to work from home. Probably IT is the one of the most industry which actually allows people or has that opportunity to work from home, right? Manufacturing, infrastructure, a lot of people have to go back to their workplaces. And I think that is also not just the fact of themselves causing the virus, but or contracting the virus, but also when we go back home, that fact, what will happen to my family members, right? I think that seems to be putting a lot of pressure. Work-wise, also a lot of companies maybe are not doing the best right now. So the fear of will I lose my job? What will happen to me? I think those are certain things that we are definitely seeing on a rise.
So, Jyotsna, I mean, what is your take? How Indians are adapting to the new normal?
I'm seeing all of what Richa said, I agree with. I think also, fundamentally, the way workplace, at least those of us, so let's take people who are in formally working and informally working. So, for instance, moms and folks who are full-time moms or full-time housewives are or house husbands are actually ending up not having downtime at all because there is restricted support both from other people, but also restricted time that they can do other things. So there's a definite pressure on that community. A lot of us focus on the employed part of people who are in the formal economy. But I can see even elders, for instance, who have just lost, who are too scared to bring in house help because
Yeah.
they're going from house to house and now are trying to do everything themselves, are unable to do it. Their kids can't visit them again because of the fear of exposure. People in the high risk group of COVID are living a very unnatural life. People with young children and careers are struggling majorly. They are struggling with the trying to manage their child's education, trying to not feel guilty about taking care of their parents, or trying to take care of their parents while doing this, as well as manage their work-life balance at home. I think the younger audience who is not yet married, so majority of our workforce, for instance, would be sort of still single, and those people have definitely struggled with a lack of social life. So they've definitely found that they're not able to meet other people. They just see people via Zoom, etc. So there's a sense of isolation. When things are going good, they can still cope. When they start struggling, so we've had to implement a whole bunch of well-being initiatives, but also initiatives to reduce social isolation. So, for instance, doing a gaming party online can be a mental health initiative for a company, right? Because it just makes you feel like you're still living. And a lot of it in the new normal is about what we call in WISA, living life regardless.
Okay.
And even when you're in depression, being able to live life regardless is what is called behavioral activation. And that helps you get out of depression. And see, these two are very wired in our brain. Our brain, if it's used to being alone and isolated when you're depressed, then when you're alone and isolated, you will also get depressed. So, so these two things will be so closely wired that right now people will, if they can just meet 3 people, they might feel better. We're not yet in clinical depression. We're in circumstantial depression, that our brain is feeling symptoms of depression because the environment around us is one. And definitely anxiety, I think, is much less spoken of. Anxiety as a disorder has gone through the roof. So, and it's not just going to stop now, not just after COVID. So there's been lots of studies around any kind of mass trauma event, and you can consider this a mass trauma event for our society. So when a mass trauma event like this happens, you will have approximately a 30% increase, and this is what research has shown, in anxiety disorders post the event, because people have just come out of it. And we've already short of mental health professionals. So it's going to be one of those places where the good thing is that people's stigma around mental health has changed in this environment, because everybody is depression, everybody is anxious, so it's okay to talk about it. It's not like, oh, life is so good, why are you the downer, you know? So I think this is the time to get out of it. And one last point, I know I'm taking a lot of time, but just one last point, which is the fact that technology is being used by the lower income groups, by students to go to school, and their parents are seeing them go to school, opens up a huge opportunity in this time, because on those phones, classes are happening. For the first time, they're using technology to get skills. If we could give them mental health skills, we could reach people across board, which you can't do through schools. So there's a lot of opportunities that I can see. It's not just crisis. Sorry, I'll finish now.
Interesting. No, you've raised some valid points, and I'll also come back to you to tackling the problem of not having enough mental health counselors and people who can provide those services. So before that, Sneh, would you like to add to it further?
Yes, the thing is that after this anxiety, definitely it's quite, a big void, for all the business people or the people, like who are doing job, uncertainty of a job came into the picture. Through Zero Mind Lab, we carried one survey for students, and it was surprisingly, they come up with this statement. They are having a fear that they will be getting known as a COVID batch in future. So we have conducted some of the sessions for their mental health, and yes, now people started talking about mental health, their depression, because it's nowadays it's quite a common for everybody. Everyone is struggling. Okay, so whether it's people who are at home, let's say housewives or working women, or the any employer, even for them, working from home is a new normal nowadays, but it's not that easy also. Or for any leaders or something, they're having cabin kind of a setup in an office, but at home, yes, there are some restrictions, the childrens are around and all, so struggling with these small stuffs. And yes, it is necessary that everyone needs to accept that this is happening, so that it will help us to have the lesser impact of this void. And I would like to rather add here, we must understand, arogyam paramam bhagyam, swastham sarvartha sadhanam. Your health related to your physical fitness, your health related to your mental fitness is at most important at this time. Nothing else is more important than that. If you are getting survived healthily by your mental health, by your physical health, that is the only important thing at this point. So concentrate there majorly, and everything will follow again.
Well said. So Josna, coming back to you, you discussed an important point about not having enough professionals. So how are you tackling that problem as a startup?
So before I answer your question, Sunita, I just wanted to say something about swasthya that Sneh talked about. It's an interesting etymology of the word. So swasthya comes from the construct swayam mein sthit. To be present within yourself is swasthya. So in Sanskrit, the concept of mental health was health. You know, if you, so when we
Yes.
say mental health is also health, actually our language already has that in it. Sorry, I just wanted to say that because when they said Swasthya, it reminded me of that.
Sure.
And yeah, let me just talk about what can you do if we don't have enough mental health professionals. I think the first thing is that there will be, you know, India didn't have that many IT professionals. If there's demand, there will be professionals. People want to do mental health. If you have underbooked professionals, 5,000, then you're not going to get 10,000. So, you know, it's one thing to say we're going to increase the supply, but you have to increase the demand. And one way of increasing the demand is increasing employee engagement and increasing well-being engagement in the employee sector, because, or in the schools, because these are the places where you can impact social change, and those then go back to the homes. What can they do in terms of, there's a lot of work happening from the top down. What's not happening so far is enough from the bottom up. So you talked about a metric of 20% of people trying to do telehealth, mental health. I'm not sure about the origin of the metric, but I have not met an employer whose employee assistance services, which is how they use mental health, has exceeded 3% take up. So, you know, the take up globally, and in India, it's sub 1% for any employer that I've talked to. So this is, how do you increase number of therapists? You increase demand first, everything else will follow. We don't have a problem of a lack of supply. We have few people, yes, but our problem is a lack of demand.
I think I would agree to that, Parita. If I could just add, I'm sorry, Joe, if I'm cutting you in here.
No. Yeah, you know exactly, please.
Right. In fact, all these numbers that get quoted, 5,000, 3,000, you would see in the media, it's about clinical psychologists, right? You don't need a clinical psychologist for everything that is happening, right? You need counselors, you need psychologists, and there are counseling psychologists. There are quite a few types of psychologists, right? And every year in our country, more than 50,000 people get post-graduation in psychology who could very well be our supply side. But like Joe said, if there is enough demand, they would actually pursue that further, right? Like how a lot of people just get into a techno or a engineering or a commerce because they're like, we're confused, let's just do engineering, let's just do commerce, which is probably not the case with psychology. Somebody who's pursuing masters in psychology is because they cared about well-being, they cared about, you know, actually making a career out of it. But there is not enough demand. Like Joe said, not everybody is getting, even the people who are there are not having enough clients. So, and that's why they have to actually go, after doing their masters in psychology, they will become a receptionist or a HR work or go into a completely different field, right? The field that they were so passionate about, because there is lack of demand, they don't sort of end up pursuing that so much. So I would agree to what Joe was saying. If there is enough demand, I think supply will follow. Even right now, there is enough supply for the kind of demand that we see. So if further demand increases, I think there's enough potential supply that can take this up as a full-time career and just do more impact work, right? Just to add to another thing that you mentioned about like 20%, in fact, to me also that was slightly surprising, Joe, because like you said, an employee assistance program across the country has less than maybe 1% uptake. And in India, if an organization has 1%, they're like, oh, it's very good. I think probably that's one of the reasons we got into this, right? I have worked at 4 corporates. I had no idea that they had EAP programs also. I think it has always been a tick in the checkbox. But there has been organization doing this forever, for many, many years, right? But the uptake, like I think from both sides, I think for an HR, it's not a priority, or for an organization, it's not a priority. And for the organizations who are doing it also, that they have expected or accepted this is how things going to be. At Yourdost, I think when we do see something like a 20-30% engagement at organizations we work with, and almost every organization come back saying, oh, really? Is that even possible? Is my company healthy? But, and you know, the way I look at it, even ASSOCHAM report says around 42.5% of corporate India needs mental health support. I believe everybody needs, right? 100%. We are humans. Humans are vulnerable. We go through ups and downs in our life. There is so much external things that are changing right now, and we need that support, right? It's okay to just seek support. So, the time our organizations would start seeing like a 60, 70, 80% of the people actually coming out and seeking support, I think that's when we would have really made an impact, right? 1%, 0.5%, 3% is nothing.
I would like to add here that currently, as a work from home culture, the remote working is likely to become a mainstream model of working after this outbreak of pandemic disease. So I guess, especially for the corporates who are, decision makers in the HR segments and all, they must come up with the these employee engagement kinds of a program, or the enhancement of the team performance, employees how they are performing in their personal life and the professional life. As I said, the person is the same, so HR can take these kind of a initiative, so that because employee is a asset for an organization. If they are doing well, then definitely organizational productivity is going to increase. So this is one of the segment where, yes, the demand is already there, but it needs to be increased, and definitely accordingly supply will get in place.
Sure, interesting. So you work with a lot of startups, and again, whether it's a startup or a corporate, what kind of awareness is required at their end to wake up to the cause of mental health for employees?
For the startup, I think you know before doing any kind of a startup, the particular director or the founder or the person who want to come across a big business, they should be mentally fit enough to understand where he or she is, what kind of a risk they can carry forward in the future, future months or future year, future timeline. And of course, yes, it's not only about the business or the employer, it's all about his or her team members, because those are dependent on those employers decisions. So they need to be first, if the route is good enough to think properly and to take a decision wisely, then definitely it will be fruitful for employee, for organization too. The same thing happens for people who are in the management committee or the decision makers. They also needs to be emotionally, emotionally having a well mindset to carry out the proper and perfect decisions. Also the decisions should be rational and practical enough. The goal setting should be in a practical way. So all these things matters, and these will only happen if their state of mind is proper.
Sure. Richa, Jyotsna, would you like to add to how awareness can be spread across corporates to the issues of mental health?
Richa, you've achieved 20-30% engagement. So I'm sure like the corporate wasn't the issue. The issue was employees actually engaging if top management wants to do it. How did you do that? I'm very curious.
Yeah. So I think just to answer, I believe, see, first, earlier the support systems, I would just say more why it is required right now, and then talk about how do we go about doing certain things. Um, I think the earlier support system that we could have those talks on the, coffee table, or just the water cooler talks and all those are just not there anymore, right? So the HRs earlier could just walk on the floor, see how people are doing, and then sort of help them, support them. It's just not there anymore, right? Especially in the scenario where everybody is working from home.
Yeah.
So I think it needs to be fostered, right? I think, and it needs to come from top to bottom, right? The top actually needs to say that, it is important. The emotional well-being of people is what I care about, and they need to walk the talk, right? And the way at least we look at it is at three levels. One is at an individual level. Individual level, helping people. How could we help people to be more resilient? How could we help people to have better stress management techniques, right? Also, also at a team level. Because like I said, now probably the HRs are not, or just the only small number of people who were the champions for wellness is not there. So can we have like team champions for wellness? Can we have certain team norms which are all about wellness, right? Like a lot of people have reached out saying their managers start their day at 2 o'clock, and that's why they ping them at 10 o'clock asking them for some work, right? Whereas they start their day at 9 and want to probably end it at 6 or whatever, right? And have a peaceful evening after that. But that's not the case, right? How could we how could we facilitate such an environment? How could we facilitate it by setting up team norms, having team champions, so that at a team level it is taken care of, right? And third, can we do things at an organizational level where it's coming like leaders actually emphasizing every time on the importance of well-being, right? If from various activities, right? In general, telling them that it's okay to seek support. If there are certain changes that are happening in the environment, for example, they are asking people to restructure the team voluntarily, involuntarily. Sometimes you have to take those calls because of businesses. In that also, could you put emotional well-being as an important part rather than saying this is a business decision? Because at the end of it, like how Sneh was saying, it's a human being at the end of it, right? And I think that's at least that's the way this is the construct we look at organizations that we work with. Um, to go into your question, Punita and Joe's question, I think we have always only thing that we talk about is we are humans. Humans are vulnerable. It's okay to seek support, right? Like how we all go to a gym or a run, all of us would go, right? Almost all of us would go do something in the morning to feel better. Similarly, can people start taking care of their emotional well-being? It's not just for that small set of people who are feeling anxious. Or again, we're humans, right? There could be things. Maybe some we want to be more productive. We want to be able to manage our team better. We might want to build healthier relationships. We might want to, have a better work-life balance. Whatever it is, can I actually have a discussion with someone, imbibe certain techniques to make ourselves better so that we are just a better version of ourselves. I think with that as a core message, I think we have been able to actually work with a lot of corporates across the country and have very high number of engagement. And I think it takes from both sides, right? The corporate also, I've also had corporates where we did an activity, so many people participated, and they are like, oh, so many of my people are stressed. Why are you stressed? Then they went ahead and talked to everyone. Next activity, nobody is going to come, right? Or actually saying, oh, you're not stressed, which means you're not doing your work right. Now, both are not helpful. So I think it needs to be on both sides, being sensitive and sort of encouraging people, saying just like you would go for a running or a gym, just go there to be a better version of yourself. That's about it, right? Be more resilient, be more productive.
So interesting.
That has really helped us in sort of be a core part of whatever organization we are working with, not just be a tick in the checkbox, another benefit to the employee. Just insurance here, just leaves here, you have another benefit called employee assistance program. I don't think, at least we don't want to partner with such organizations. We want to partner with organizations that really care about well-being.
Well, I completely resonate with what Richa said. And what we've found is that from an employer point of view or the manager's point of view, giving them insights really helps, because they're much more tech oriented. It's even harder because it's one thing to go in and organize an event. It's another to expect people to download an app, work with it, etc. So getting take up on that is also very hard. So one is from the managers, just giving them data and insights on what's going on. So running regular surveys on the employee well-being and telling them so many people are struggling with sleep issues. On an average, each organization, about 30 to 40% of the people are struggling with sleep issues. And half of it I still blame Netflix. So I have got this Netflix issue going on clearly. But they're also struggling with anxiety, and everything else follows. So all of our mental health is very linked to being able to get adequate sleep. So that is one aspect of it. And saying that, look, maybe we'll just present it as something like that. The other is from the employee's perspective, we do things like make it an opt-out rather than opt-in. So if you have to seek support, that's an opt-in, right? How can we make working on your mental health an opt-out? So like if Richa was organizing an event, everybody has to attend, and then some people have to opt out actively, say, I'm not going to it. But also for us, how do we do it virtually? We'll do gratitude challenges for the whole organization. Just like they would have walking challenges, we do a gratitude challenge that 7 days post your gratitude. And those kind of challenges get everybody involved without it having to be about being vulnerable also. So we have to work with culture as it is, get people engaged, and then we'll send them an email with just like 5 smileys saying, how are you feeling today? And depending on what they click on, then the bot will have a different conversation. But it's coming into the email box and they're having a conversation on the web. So it's very low friction for them to engage. That gives us insights on how people are feeling, gives them help when they need it. And that kind of ways of engaging people in ways that they're finding useful, employers finding useful, sort of changes how you think of mental health. We can't be doing what everybody was doing earlier and telling people they should. Should is a word that has no place in mental health. So, we have to find ways in which people can easily work on it.
Sure.
Yeah. If I could just, sorry,
Yeah.
if I could just
Yeah,
add, I think I keep giving this example, and Joe, you just brought all that back today, being World Mental Health Day. We are running this gratitude chain all over. Think of us as a pressure cooker, right? In the house, think of it on a flame. And in the house, we have a regulator on our flame, and life we don't. So we are that pressure cooker. The flame is actually our external environment. We can't control, right? How many would be the numbers, which the next block somebody might be COVID positive? Or what will my neighbors think of me? I really can't control, right? So those are your external situations. Now, what happens if there's just too much pressure? The pressure cooker could burst, right? That is our burnout and things that could happen.
Yeah.
One way to release that pressure is through whistle, right? And talking to your friends, family members, bot, or even a therapist is all your way to sort of release that pressure. Another way to actually being able to handle a lot of pressure is to increase yourself from a 5-liter pressure cooker to a 10-liter pressure cooker, right? And a lot of these things like gratitude, mindfulness, there is a lot of science behind it which says that how it increases our stress management capability, right? How it releases endorphins and various happy hormones in our body, and so that we are more resilient, we are better version of ourselves and can just handle a lot more pressure. So I think just that came to my mind while you were saying. So that is very important, right? It's not only about people who have stress, depressions, for regular people, right? Can we be better? Can we actually increase our mental fitness, so to say?
Sure.
In fact, she talked about the science, Punita, if I may. I know we're sort of hijacking your panel discussion. But there's the science. There's one thing that I love to tell people about, which very few people know, is you have an autonomous nervous system, right? That regulates your heartbeat, that also regulates your emotions. So you have automatic thoughts. You don't decide what thoughts you have. You also have the ability to decide, but you have automatic hormones. All of that is coming out of your autonomous nervous system, as is your heart rate. So when you're anxious, it goes fast, as is your breath. It happens whether or not you decide to breathe. Now, the only thing that you can control in that autonomous nervous system is your breath. So every mindfulness activity will start with breathing because it's trying to gain access to your autonomous nervous system. So as long as you can regulate your breath, and remember, everything in your brain is wired together. So you gain access through any one thing. It's like hacking into a computer system, right? You gain access into it, then you're good. You can make other things also sing and dance. So by regulating your breathing to be smaller, yesterday I had a call from a friend who was anxious and her heart rate was 120. And while she was talking to me, she had the pulse oximeter on her and it was showing her heart rate. And it came down to 80. Measuring how you're either talking to a friend or breathing, you can actually see how it's changing your heart rate. You can see how breathing is changing. So very often we say we can't measure mental health, right? Look at these parameters like heart rate and your breathing as ways of you measuring how you're actually feeling, because these are linked to your emotional state.
So interesting. So I think, currently because of the pandemic, the awareness has increased and it's going to further increase in the coming times. But tell me, 5, 6 years back, when you would go to an investor and pitch this idea, how was it received? Were they that open to the cause of mental health and awareness?
Richa?
Oh, okay, great. Thank you for that question. So I think firstly, I used to get this. So we are a private limited organization. I think one thing that I've always, right, at those days in 2015, we would always hear is, hey, you're doing something good, which is good, good. But this should be a not-for-profit or an NGO. This is not
Mhm.
meant for to be a real business. I think that is something we used to hear a lot. Um, Definitely, there are not enough people. There's not enough market for something like this, which I hear
Mhm.
even right now. It's
Yeah.
right. It's getting better, but nobody will pay for it. Nobody will use something like this.
Mhm.
It's not a real thing, right? So I think that is something I would hear a lot. In fact, at it's very interesting. Even at colleges and corporates that we work with, we would always hear things like, in a group of 10,000 people, they'll be like, what is it? We'll only have 4 or 5 people who need something like this, right? Which tells you how they look at it, right? How important. And 4 or 5 people once a year they will need something like this, right? That is something that I hear mostly.
Mhm.
Or they would say things like, you don't need an extensive support. Let's do a webinar and things would be great, right? We do so much about mental well-being. So I would ask them, what is it that you generally do? And they're like,
Yeah.
we conduct a webinar once a year. I'm like, great. Thank you. Like sometimes I actually feel like telling them, like we breathe all the time. You need support all the time. Right? It's not like you breathe. Today is a breathing day and we all breathe. That's not how it works, right? So yeah. But investors, by the always have heard this. Doing good and doing business should not happen together. One being that, two being how big is the market? Are there enough takers for something like this? Yeah, that's something I've heard. Another thing which I struggle every time I have this discussion. For a mental health support to be effective, see, we are not building like a Swiggy or a Uber. It's
Mhm.
not like the number of times a person, like how many sessions a person has is not. If I'm doing my job
Yeah,
right, maybe a 4 or a 5 or a 6 session is great, right? And the
yeah,
person would be better on their own. I don't need someone like for a Swiggy to say that they are doing very well. Somebody ordering, who are your power users? This is a word I use get a lot,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
That for a delivery or a cab, the power users would be people who are ordering like every day they are ordering from Swiggy, every day they are ordering a cab, which can't be the case. If they are my power users, which means I'm doing my job wrong, right? That I have a person who's with us and is coming every day for 4 days, 4 times to seek support. I think to get that construct out, that you can't compare the two, has been a struggle and continues to be a struggle.
Mhm.
Sunita, you clearly created a safe space because you're going to have the two of us vent to you. Because, I hear that from the other side as well. So we are not India focused, right? So I'll have VCs coming to us. Yeah, yeah, okay. At least you're an Indian startup, but not focused in India. Good. So
Okay.
because their hypothesis. So you have to understand how a VC operates. VC operates on three bases. One, they may have a hypothesis in that segment that, with all respect to VCs, and most of them are very good friends of mine,
Yeah.
but which basically means somebody else has made a pot of money in that space and had an exit. So, suddenly one exit happens and everybody wants to invest in the next company and maybe the next company that will happen. When 3, 4 have happened, then the space is done, then the new space comes in. So it's a little bit like fast fashion. So now, these guys, and then one of the top VCs in the country explained this to me. He looks for two things. He says, how much, imagine you were digging for oil, right? How much oil is there and how far do you have to dig? So
Yeah.
how big is the market and how difficult is it to get it? Now, mental health in India doesn't satisfy any of those criteria. It might be a potentially big market, but you have to dig really, really deeply. in order to get to it, right? So there's a lot of effort involved. So from a VC perspective, I mean, because of all of these reasons, I think early in our thing, my co-founder told me that I don't think we're fundable, and I got very upset with him. We had one of a massive fight. He's also my husband, so it was a very bad for us. So, but at the same time, so we actually decided that B2B or whatever, we will do this as social impact, sustainable social impact. And that for us, India is always sustainable social impact. It breaks even. We kept our costs low for 4 years and we broke even. But the main story for us has always been international. And that international story, even Indian VCs are crazy about. So it's not that they don't get mental health. They don't have stigma, or they would love to do personally, they would all love to make a huge difference. Many of them will be contributing to like ACT funds, and they're actually funding you, Richa, aren't they? In order to do non-profit work during COVID. So many of them will actually want to make sure mental health happens, but their hypothesis around this is a profession, this is their job. They have to make money for the people who gave them money. And I don't think we've demonstrated that mental health in India can make the kind of money that their other options can make yet. Still, we are able to make enough money not to have to be one of those venture-backed hyper-growth companies, which is why we're still alive.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Sure. So,
yeah, I think it is a space that will take time to mature, right? It is not something just because you're going to put big banners or you would say 50% off on this, it'll happen. Like, I will go back again to what I was saying, Punita, because competition is not a 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 companies working in this space. It's the person sleeping over it, right? And that's a huge, you need to wake them up, and that will take time. So you need people who can be patient, who can believe in that hypothesis that doing good, doing business can happen together. We have a big market out there. It will wake up, but it will take its own time.
When Richa has a big exit is when it will wake up, is my prediction.
So I would like to put highlight on this one.
All eyes on you, Richa.
No pressure taken. sorry, Sneh. Please go ahead.
No, it's okay. So I would like to put highlight on this one. This is not only in India. Yes, I do agree. India is quite a big market for all these things. But yes, there are many segments which are still not, not touched in the way it should be. Also, there is you can say a market which is outside of India. Like now, many of the people who are working on a H1 or they are dependent on a H4 visa in US. Many of them, H1 visa holders are coming back to India. So working on their mental health, they must be having, children's at the age of say 10, 12 years, accommodation of them, education system for them. For them also, it is quite difficult to survive suddenly, coming back to coming back to home country. So there will be also some issues of mental health will be occurring. Also through Zero Mind Lab, we have come across some of the data, and currently we are working on cross-culture mental health. Because currently, what happening, everyone is working from home, remote working is going on, but on happening on a different time zone. Let's say if we are having, if we'll say US is having 3 time zone, and people who are working or the employees who are working from India, they are working on their time zone. So to work on their time zone with keeping in mind about the cross culture things and everything, it's quite a stressful. So I think these are also kind of areas where we need to touch. And yes, we have already started working on it. And of course, there will be many organizations who will now come up to work on these segments. So yes, it's quite a big market. Also, there are employees who are working for Japanese and the Korean kind of Korean cultures. So yes, they are carrying a different kind of mental stress, communications barriers and everything. So these are also the segments where we need to touch. Also, there are, of course, women entrepreneurship is the main area out here, because we there is no gender bias, but yes, we also need to understand that women works on the 4 hormones, and it's not that easy for all the 30 days, work with those 4 hormones with the stable mindset. So this is also one area where we need to touch, and we need to work parallelly with the corporate segment. We need to work parallelly with HRs of particular corporate organizations and all. So yes, it's a huge market.
I think
With
that
this, we are
hormone thing can be solved
yeah.
with period leave that I think Zomato just started, right? Which was I thought, a great initiative. And some of these things in mental health are simply acknowledging the issues that people face, right? Crashes at work, period leave. I mean, just creating an environment where people can work in a mentally helpful environment, I think would be more, is the need many times. You can't hire a well-being company to do things that the employer needs to do.
Yeah, Urban Company recently launched its first initiative of mental health leave policy.
But as we say in this segment, one framework cannot fit for all. So it's
Sure.
like two bodies cannot be same. The two business, even though within same domain, cannot be same. So particularly analyzing their business needs and then offering services or product accordingly is a need of a time now.
So,
Actually, referring to the wellness leave, sorry, Purita, just maybe a minute, or even what Joe said, I think it's about creating that environment, right? We just call it all purpose leave, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
I think I don't want to take a period leave. I feel very comfortable working at that time. I prefer taking leave on my mom's birthday. I find that to be a thing that is important, or rather, I feel that I need to sort of take off and on that day. So I think that whole thing of what you want, like having that open environment where people can say, you know
Exactly.
what, whether it's periods, whether it's mental health, whether it's the child's
True.
school, whether it's your party at home, anything you can just like walk in and say, I'm off today, this is important, and that's about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think by saying things, but there is a very important factor. I absolutely agree with you that, my team would have told me I've got cramps sort of privately and said that I'm taking leave, right? When they needed to, when we don't have period leave in our company. But by saying period leave or saying mental health leave, as Sunita talked about, I think what you're saying is it's socially acceptable to take leave
Yeah.
for that. You're making,
Yes.
and even the word period being socially acceptable, the word mental health being socially acceptable in a work context, and saying everybody is entitled to this. It just recognizes a reality that we've just spent far too much time stigmatizing.
Yeah, I agree.
sure. So with this, we are coming to an end of this discussion. So we'll just take one last question from our audience. We have a question from Shravani. Can we give the audio to Shravani?
Shravani, you're on mute.
Please ask your question, Shravani. Can you unmute and ask your question? Yeah, we can hear you. I think there's some problem, so let me read it out for everyone here. Our question is, mental health issues are with all persons in current situation, but how we help ourselves to get out of this situation where we are stuck in life. Okay, maybe needed a personal advice, or maybe to be on one of your platforms.
How do you get yourself out of a situation where you're stuck? I can give you a sort of algorithm for it, because in writing the AI for it, I end up understanding how to do that. So a good algorithm is first accept where you are. So accept reality. And there are various mindfulness exercises you can do, but get to terms with where you are. You can only get out of where you are once you have come to terms with the fact that you are there. As long as you are fighting, why am I there? Say I had a cancer diagnosis. So why did I have a cancer diagnosis? Once I accept I have a cancer diagnosis, I can begin to say, okay, this I cannot control. What can I control? I want to live life regardless. And then say, I want to live my life on my terms regardless. When you think of people like Stephen Hawking, who have lived life on their terms regardless of what life threw at them, right? You can see so many examples once you do that. So also look for examples of others who have struggled like you and lived their life regardless. And then look at what are the controllables in your life. So what can you actually control? And sometimes you have the emotional, physical energy to do that. There you have to, all of these exercises will help you store up your physical energy if you do exercise, emotional energy if you do cognitive therapy, or if you do mindfulness, or all of that, eat the right food, all of those things. But eventually you have to decide to live your life your way and use things that you can control. But that's sort of the 3-step way to start with: accepting it, start with deciding to live your life regardless, and then start with figuring out what your controllables are.
So,
Yeah, if it seems
so on that
difficult
note, we
to
would
talk
like,
to someone
yeah,
on any of the places, just
Yeah.
talk about it. I think that's important. It's great that you actually put that question out. Thank you for that, Shiv.
So thank you for answering it. And on that note, we would like to conclude this interesting discussion. And thank you to all of you to coming forward and raising the concerns and answering all the questions. This conversation is also live on Facebook, and we'll keep on having questions there as well. So if I could ask you or anybody from your team could look at those questions and answer them, would be great. And thank you for all of you to joining us today. And hope to see
Thank
you
you.
in person next time when we talk and say high five to each other.
Yes. Thank
For
you
sure.
so much.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, attendees.
Thank you.